World War II began on September 1st, 1939, when Nazi Germany invaded Poland. During the course of World War II, the Nazis built many ghettos, concentration, and death camps. An estimated 6 million Jews and millions of others, including the disabled, Roma, Sinti, and homosexuals, were murdered in the name of Hitler's vision of a pure Aryan society. In mid-1944, the Allies began to liberate the concentration and death camps. At last, the remaining survivors of Hitler's camps were finally free. Survivors of the Holocaust. They endured the unimaginable, unspeakable horrors. For each survivor, liberation was something different. For many of them, the emotional and physical trauma of the Holocaust was so great, it meant a lifetime seeking physical, spiritual, and emotional liberation. Here are some of their liberation stories.
I was liberated from Auschwitz January the 27th, 1945. I was 9 years old when I was liberated.
When Auschwitz was liberated, among the 2,800 prisoners were 180 children. Miriam Ziegler was one of them.
I remember standing at the wires and watching the Russian army coming in. This is when we saw the Russian soldiers coming in on their trucks and walking and marching, and we couldn't believe it. No more Nazis over us. And my feelings were, now what? What's going to be now? I've seen that picture in magazines, I've seen that picture in the encyclopedia, and I said, I can't believe that's me. I know it's me. I know I recognize myself. I do recognize myself, but no feelings, emptiness.
This is the first time Miriam has been back to Poland since her liberation 70 years ago. Miriam's daughter Adrian is accompanying her on this journey.
I knew my mom was in Auschwitz from when I was very young. I'm scared for my mom in the sense that I've always seen her as an incredibly brave woman, but I know how sensitive she is. I'm hoping my mom's able to get closure.
Miriam will be reunited with other child survivors to recreate the well-known liberation photo.
They're trying to get as many children as they can find.
Now you look like yourself?
Now I look like myself.
Miriam reunites with her friend Paula Leibowitz, one of the other children in the photo.
Us were very close because we came from the same time from Auschwitz, the last transport, and we were friends in Auschwitz. Took us up the wagons, shaved our hair, and they tattooed us. What is your number?
My number is 16862.
My number is 16892.
30 numbers difference. We about 306 women arrived from Australia. We all have a series of numbers. They are similar.
My friend I haven't seen for so long.
Look at this.
Okay, ladies.
Mwah.
70 years later, for you guys to be friends and be able to laugh, it's just I'm amazed. I know.
Miriam's daughter Adrian wants to see where her mother was imprisoned as a child.
I need to see what Auschwitz was like, what my mom lived through. When I was growing up, I didn't want to hear about the atrocities and how she cheated death because it hurt too much.
The scary part is of going back, because it's bringing back all kinds of memories to me. It's scary to go back and to face it again. I was in Auschwitz a little bit over a year. I was on my own. They shaved my head, they tattooed my arm, and they took us to a barrack in the gypsy camp in Birkenau.
Joseph Mengele, the infamous doctor of Auschwitz, performed cruel and often painful medical experiments on twins and children of the camp. Miriam was one of them.
I remember going into this big room with people in white uniforms, with all kinds of things on the tables, and they did the experiments on us. I remember coming back and having terrible pains in my hip and my back, and that's all I remember.
That's the barrack my mom was in, number 2. My mom survived this. How a child survives these conditions for a year and a half with nothing. No one. Not having any family, not knowing if anyone was still alive. Surviving on her own.
I'm not sure, but I remember the wires. I remember them coming here through.
This may be where your freedom started.
Miriam believes this is where the photo was taken by the Russian soldier.
This was a hard day. I think this was the hardest day.
It was very hard.
You look sad.
I am sad. And it's just plain difficult. But I'm glad what I did. I have a little bit of a closure.
That's the 3 of us. That's me in Detroit in my apartment, and they came to visit me in 1955. Remember when you came? In Vilna, in the yeshiva.
70 years after liberation, 4 of the child survivors recreate the historic photo.
I don't know why I was picked, but I'm alive. This happened to many million people. I am the lucky one. And I feel now I have to talk about it. I don't know how much longer I can talk about it, but as long as I can, I didn't do all those years, now I have to do it.
I was liberated on January 21st, 1945. I think about it. I remember a feeling that you can't describe. I felt like I was reborn. I was in the concentration camp Stutthof with my mother.
When Jews arrived at the concentration camps, children, the elderly, and the sick were selected for death. Only those who could work survived. To keep her 10-year-old alive, Faigie's mother dressed her in women's clothing and lied to the Nazis about her age.
I was a kid, I was 10 and a half, and yet I portrayed myself as grown up because grown women were taken to work. They survived. Kids were killed.
In January 1945, Allied forces gained ground against the Nazis, and they eventually retreated. The concentration camp prisoners who were strong enough to walk were taken on the infamous death marches, where they walked for days in the cold winter without proper shoes, food, or clothing. Thousands of them died during these last days of the war.
We marched and marched till we came and we saw huts. All of a sudden, this I remember very clearly, we saw and heard planes overhead. The soldiers abandoned us and we were left alone.
Fagi, who was only 10 years old at liberation, does not remember many of the details. So she relies on her mother's memory.
I found in a beautiful English handwriting notes from my mother what happened. Some of the stronger women went to the highway to find out what is going on. Suddenly, they saw from uniformed men riding on horses. One of the women yelled, "I think those are Russian soldiers." You cannot imagine our happiness as we saw the captain on the white horse riding towards us. With all the strength they could muster, the women pulled down the captain on his horse and started to hug him and kiss him. He told the women that the Russian infantry is marching a mile behind. My mother concludes, we still thought this was all a dream.
Fagi's father died while imprisoned in Dachau concentration camp.
My mother and I were the only survivors.
Fagi recalls the kindness of her Russian liberators.
The Russian soldiers were angels. In our eyes, they were angels to us. As long as I live, I'm going to have a warm spot in my heart for the Russian soldiers. If not for them, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't have married, I wouldn't have children. I have now 4 great-grandchildren.
We came out to the gate and the parachutists were gone, the German soldiers were gone. Saw tanks rolling over the highway. I grabbed the hand of the soldier looking out. All I could say was I was out of breath and thank you, thank you. And so he pulled me up and I sat behind him and he looked through the binocular and then he said, saw all the people coming. So he said something, what's that? And I said, and I didn't know the English word for concentration camp. So I said, it's a Jewish camp. And we rolled in and the people went bananas. I mean, I have never seen anything like it. I will never forget that sight, how it was. They screamed, they cried, and it was just hell broke loose. And all of a sudden, those soldiers sang a song, and we had never heard that song before. But I realized it was an important song because they looked so proud. And it was "O Canada." And that's the first time I heard it. And I always say it's the most beautiful song in the world. And we were free.
הבוחר בשירי זמר המלך אל חיי עולמי מתגדל ותלש מרבה יום הדברה חילותי והמלך מלכות אליך יכול נביא וכל נבחרי אוהב ישראל.
I was brought up in a religious family And to me, Judaism was sacred. When I came back after liberation to my hometown, finding out that my parents were murdered, the house was ransacked, even the furniture was gone, only empty rooms. I didn't want to go near a synagogue. I didn't want to believe anymore in the Jewish faith and Jewish religion. My brother and I, we were eating tray morning, noon, at night, not because I loved it. It was disgusting, but I was doing it for spite. I was angry with God. I never realized it until liberation that I'll never see my parents again, you know.
Following the war, Ernest discovered that after he and his family arrived in Auschwitz, his parents, sisters, and nephew were sent directly to the gas chambers. Ernest and his brother were only kept alive to work.
We had no idea that they walked them into the gas chambers, into their deaths. No matter I've been so many, 10, 11 times on the March of the Living, you know, when I get into Birkenau, you know, I start to think about my parents, so brutally murdered. One night I had a dream. It wasn't a dream, it was a nightmare. My father and my mother appeared in front of me when I was eating chazer. And my father said, "Is this the way we brought you up?" I woke up in a cold sweat. Said to myself that if I had such a nightmare, I owed them that much that I should go back to the religion. So I went back to Judaism, and I decided at that time, if I'll ever get married and bring children into this world, they should know what the Jewish religion is, what the Jewish holiday means, what Judaism means. I think it's my sacred obligation that I owe to my parents.
Howard was a slave laborer at Bergen-Belsen when Allied forces began to draw near. The Nazi guards soon fled the camp. Starving and his health deteriorating, Howard laid down to die.
You simply laid down to die. That's exactly what I did. I don't know how long it took, if it took hours or half a day. Suddenly I hear voices over me. I hear a woman and a young girl who points out that, you know, he's still alive. How about saving him? The woman became adamant, arguing with her, "Leave him, he's dead. What are you going to do with him?" The girl, she says, "No, I'm going to save him."
The mystery girl pulled him out of the pile of dead prisoners and tried to nurse him back to health. The two were eventually separated when Howard was moved to an American hospital. In May 1947, Howard emigrated to Toronto, Canada, but he never forgot the mystery girl who saved his life.
News got to me that the girl that saved my life is arrived in Toronto. I got flowers. I went to greet the girl that saved my life. I knock on the door, I see this beautiful girl, blonde, and I said, "Do you recognize me?" She says, "Oh, it's you?" "Sure." I thanked her so many times for saving me.
Her name was Nancy. The two began to date and fell in love.
I was able to propose to the girl that saved my life, and lucky enough, she accepted. We got married in 1950. We have 4 children. One of my sons is right here with me on the march. We have 11 grandchildren and 2 great-grandchildren. And as recently as last month, we celebrated 63 years of marriage.
As the end of the war drew closer, Joe Mandel was struggling to survive in a Nazi labor camp in Austria.
You had to be lucky not to get sick, or not to die from hunger, or not to be shot. In 1945, May the 4th, never forget, it was so quiet, and I said something happening, and we didn't know what. The Americans came, they came in. Of course, we were happy. And I met a lot of soldiers. As a matter of fact, I met a Jewish soldier. I hugged him, and I said, I'm so happy to see you. I made a mistake because I should have got his name. But in that time, I wasn't interested in names, I was interested in food.
For the first time since the end of the war, in 2012, Joe Mandel returned to Poland with the March of the Living, a Holocaust education program that draws students and survivors from all over the world. That same year, the March of the Living also invited a group of American World War II veterans who liberated Nazi concentration camps.
We broke into the camp, all the Germans had fled or they were killed. So we suddenly saw the survivors.
Did you ever expect to see what you saw?
Of course not.
Joe Mandel is accompanied by his daughter, Gabrielle. They aren't aware Joe is about to meet one of his liberators, Mason Mickey Dorsey.
I'll meet you again.
Same here.
Same here.
You were in Gunskirchen.
Absolutely. I was the first to get to
May the 4th, then I must see you. When I saw him, I really was happy to see him. At least one guy I could thank. I'm still here. I said, there is almost no words how much I appreciate the thing what you did.
It was so exciting. People were crying, people were standing on plants and stones, and it was almost like a dome trying to see Joe and his liberator.
Oh, you're his daughter?
Yes.
That was a really emotional experience. I stand here today and my kids are alive today because he got liberated.
This life-changing trip allowed Joe to open up for the first time and share his story of survival with students.
In the beginning, Germany occupied Hungary, and they took me, in that time, they took all the young kids, they took us as laborers. Never before I told the whole story as I told it in the March of the Living.
I never, ever heard the stories that came out in the March of the Living. Never saw my father cry in all my years, ever.
It's hard to tell it, but I saw how the kids really felt what I went through. And I said to them, I said, because I look at you, I'm gonna live forever.